The first time I heard the song, I thought the isolation was finally breaking my mind. 3 months trapped on Research Station Kepler-442b, studying quantum field anomalies that defied every law of physics I'd learned in my 20-year career. Outside our reinforced windows, the crimson wasteland stretched endlessly under harsh binary starlight, a desolation that made Mars look hospitable. The air recyclers hummed, gravity generators maintained their steady 9G pull, and quantum field detectors chirped streams of impossible data. But underneath it all, threading through the familiar sounds of human technology, was something else, something that made my bones vibrate with frequencies that shouldn't exist. "Marcus, you need sleep," Dr. Yuki Tanaka said, her voice carrying that particular tone reserved for colleagues who'd spent too many consecutive hours staring at data streams. Her fingers danced across holographic displays, showing quantum resonance, patterns that resembled abstract art more than scientific measurements. "We've been analyzing these readings for 18 hours straight." The song, that's what I'd started calling it, grew louder as my exhaustion deepened. Not sound in any conventional sense, but something fundamental. A vibration that seemed to originate from the quantum foam itself. A melody written in the Planck scale fluctuations of spacetime. "The patterns are evolving," I said, pulling up the latest readings. "Look at this progression over the past 72 hours. These quantum field distortions aren't random. They're organizing themselves into increasingly complex structures." Commander Sarah Chun looked up from her tactical console, gray eyes sharp with military alertness. "Organizing how? Are we talking about natural phenomenon or ... double quotes?" She didn't finish, but I knew what she was thinking. In our line of work, unexplained organization usually meant intelligence. "I don't know," I admitted, "but whatever's causing these fluctuations isn't in any database. The mathematical models don't just break down, they become meaningless. It's like trying to measure the color of music." Pavel Volkov, our chief engineer, grunted from his position at the environmental controls. His thick Russian accent made even technical jargon sound like poetry. "In Soviet Union, we had saying, when mathematics fails, universe is trying to teach you new language. Perhaps these quantum ghosts are trying to speak." The song pulsed, a harmony that made my bones ache with strange familiarity. I'd been hearing it for 3 days now, growing stronger each time I focused on the quantum field data. The frequency was too complex, too purposeful. It followed mathematical progressions that resembled musical scales, but operated on principles human music had never explored. "I'm going to run a full spectrum analysis," I announced. "If there's intelligence behind these patterns, we need to understand what we're dealing with." "Marcus," Yuki's voice was gentle but firm, "you've been working nonstop. Your judgment might be compromised." "My judgment is fine," I snapped more harshly than intended. The song crescendoed, and for a moment, I could swear I heard something like laughter in its harmonic overtones. "Sorry. I feel like we're on the verge of something important, something that could change everything." Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm, a habit that had kept her alive through 3 alien contact situations. "Change it how?" I stared at the quantum field displays, watching patterns shift and flow like living things. "I don't know yet, but I think we're about to find out." "The quantum field readings are off the charts," Pavel announced 3 days later, his thick fingers flying over his engineering console. "Whatever's causing these fluctuations isn't natural. Energy patterns like this, they should be impossible." The quantum resonance patterns were no longer random fluctuations. They were organizing themselves into structures of breathtaking complexity, recursive patterns that folded in on themselves, creating loops and spirals that existed in more dimensions than our instruments could measure. "It's like watching a symphony written in mathematics," I murmured. The song in my head had evolved beyond simple melody into something resembling language, though I couldn't understand the words. The harmonies were becoming more urgent, as if something was trying desperately to communicate. "A symphony requires a composer," Sarah said, her tactical display showing energy signatures that made her increasingly nervous. "We're the only sentient life within 50 light years. If something's creating these patterns, where is it coming from? Are we I asked, feeling my colleague's eyes on me. What if we're not the first to notice these patterns? What if something else has been here all along, waiting for someone to listen? Yuki's fingers flew across her console, pulling up geological surveys and mineral dating analysis. The quantum anomalies started appearing roughly 10,000 years ago, according to crystalline formations we've studied, but they've accelerated exponentially in the past century. She paused, dark eyes widening. That's right around the time humanity developed quantum mechanics and started experimenting with quantum field manipulation, I added, feeling pieces of a massive puzzle clicking into place. What if our experiments haven't been observing quantum phenomena? What if they've been creating resonance with something that was already here? The song pulsed in recognition, carrying emotions I was only beginning to understand. Loneliness, searching, hope. Over the following days, I became obsessed. While my colleagues slept, I worked alone in the lab, trying to decode the patterns. I set up additional quantum field generators, fine-tuning their frequencies to match the resonance signatures. Each adjustment brought the song into sharper focus, revealing layers of complexity that took my breath away. "Marcus, you're scaring." "U.S.," Sarah said on the fourth day, watching me work with her hand never far from her weapon. "You haven't slept in 72 hours. You're talking to yourself, and the energy readings around you ... they're not normal." I looked up from my console, seeing my reflection in the darkened screen. I looked terrible, hollow-eyed, unshaven, disheveled, but I felt more alive than I had in years. "I'm not talking to myself," I whispered. "I'm talking to them." "Them?" Pavel's voice was carefully neutral. "Marcus, my friend, who is them?" I turned back to the displays, where patterns were becoming more complex by the hour. "I don't know exactly, but they're here. They've been here for thousands of years, maybe longer, and they're trying to teach us something." "Teach us what?" Yuki asked. I smiled, feeling the song flow through me like liquid light. How to sing. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to understand the song and started trying to harmonize with it. Alone in the lab, I began to sing back, not with my voice, but with the quantum field generators. I adjusted their frequencies to match the patterns I was hearing, creating a technological chorus that resonated with the song. The effect was immediate and icy, terrifying. The entire station shuddered as reality hiccuped. For one impossible moment, the walls became transparent, and I could see through them, not just through the metal and ceramic, but through the very fabric of spacetime itself. The quantum foam became visible, a seething mass of probability that sparkled with impossible colors. And in that foam, I saw them. They were vast and ancient, existing in the spaces between atoms. They weren't beings in any sense I could understand. They were living music, consciousness expressed as harmony, intelligence existing as pure mathematical beauty. They had been singing their loneliness into the void for eons, hoping someone somewhere would hear them and sing back. And we had. Our quantum experiments had created an accidental harmony with their song. For the first time in their existence, they had found voices that could match their own. The vision lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. When the walls solidified again, I was weeping openly, overwhelmed by the beauty and tragedy of what I'd witnessed. "My God," I breathed. "They're not trying to communicate. They're trying to harmonize." The next morning, I tried to explain my discovery to the others. They thought I'd suffered a complete psychotic break. "Marcus, listen to yourself," Yuki pleaded. "You're talking about interdimensional beings made of music. That's not science. That's the delusion of a mind pushed beyond its limits. Look at the data," I shouted, manipulating the holographic displays with shaking hands. "The patterns aren't random. They're musical. They follow harmonic progressions that correspond to human brainwave frequencies, specifically theta waves associated with creativity and pattern recognition." Pavel studied the readouts with careful attention. "I admit, these patterns are ... unusual. But Marcus, you are talking about quantum entities like they are lost children. Even if such beings could exist, how could they think? How could they feel? The same way we do," I replied, the song humming softly in my thoughts. "Consciousness isn't limited to biological forms. It's information processing, pattern recognition, self-awareness. If these patterns can organize themselves into complex structures, why couldn't they organize themselves into minds?" Sarah's hand moved to her weapon. "Even if you're right, and I'm not saying you are," What do they want? Connection, I said simply. They want what every conscious being wants, to not be alone. They've been singing for millennia, hoping someone would hear them. We're the first species to develop quantum technology sensitive enough to detect their song. But even as I spoke, I could see the doubt in their eyes. The song was getting stronger, more complex, and I wasn't the only one beginning to hear it. Yuki had started humming unconsciously while she worked. Sarah's tactical displays were showing energy signatures that looked suspiciously like musical notation. Pavel's engineering reports were filled with references to resonance harmonics. The beings were learning, adapting their song to human consciousness. And we were teaching them about us in return. Our thoughts, fears, hopes were being woven into their cosmic symphony. There's something else, I said, pulling up long-range communication logs. I've been monitoring our quantum communication arrays. The patterns are spreading. Other research stations, other quantum experiments, they're all starting to show similar anomalies. Are you saying this is some kind of invasion? Sarah asked. No, I replied, though a chill ran down my spine. But it's definitely first contact, and I'm not sure we're prepared for what that means. The implications were staggering. These beings existed in quantum superposition, simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, until observed. Our experiments had been collapsing their wave functions, forcing them into more concrete existence. We were accidentally domesticating entities that had existed as pure possibility for millions of years, and they were grateful. The song carried emotions. I was only beginning to understand joy at finally being heard, relief at no longer being alone, and desperate hope that we wouldn't abandon them to silence again. But there was something else in the song now, fear. They were learning about humanity as we learned about them, and some of what they discovered worried them. Our capacity for violence, our tendency to exploit what we didn't understand, our history of turning discoveries into weapons. They were right to be afraid. That night, Sarah made the call to command. Within hours, a military vessel would arrive to investigate and potentially weaponize our discovery. The beings would be studied, contained, turned into tools for human expansion into quantum dimensions we weren't ready to understand. The song grew mournful, filled with expectation of betrayal. In the quantum foam, I could sense their preparations, not for war, but for withdrawal. They were getting ready to hide again, to fade back into the spaces between atoms where human science couldn't reach them. I couldn't let that happen. I sabotaged the communications array at 0200 hours, 2 hours before the military vessel's scheduled arrival. The quantum field generators hummed with new harmonies as I worked, the song guiding my fingers across controls I barely understood. The beings were helping me, their vast intelligence focused on buying time. Marcus, step away from the console, Sarah ordered, her weapon drawn and trained on me. She'd found me in the communication bay, surrounded by sparking electronics and burned circuits. I don't want to hurt you, but I won't let you compromise the station security. Security? I laughed bitterly. Sarah, we're not in danger. We're the danger. Do you understand what the military will do with this discovery? They'll turn it into a weapon. They'll use these beings to spy on enemy quantum communications, to disrupt their technology, to wage war on a level we've never imagined. You don't know that, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I know enough, I replied, my hands moving to the quantum field control panel. These beings aren't just entities. They're living music. They're harmony itself, given consciousness, and we're about to teach them that music can be weaponized. The song filled the communication bay now, audible to everyone. Yuki and Pavel had arrived, standing transfixed as reality shimmered around us. The quantum beings were manifesting more strongly than ever, their presence turning the air itself into a symphony of visible light. What are you doing? Yuki whispered. I'm giving them a choice, I said, initiating the quantum field resonance cascade. For the first time in their existence, I'm giving them the power to choose their own destiny. The cascade built slowly, quantum fields aligning across dimensional boundaries. The being's song grew from mournful to questioning, to hopeful. They understood what I was offering. They had learned enough about human nature to know what was coming, and they were making their choice. Marcus, stop, Pavel shouted, his engineering instincts recognizing the danger. You're destabilizing the quantum matrix. The station's power. GRID can't handle this kind of resonance cascade. The station will be fine, I said, though sweat beaded on my forehead. But they won't be here anymore. They're going to find a new place to sing, somewhere they can't be used as weapons. The song reached crescendo, and reality shattered around us like glass. For one perfect moment, I felt what they felt, the vast loneliness of existence, the joy of finding harmony, the bittersweet necessity of letting go. They showed me their gratitude in a mathematical poem written in the fundamental constants of the universe. Images flashed through my mind, their home in the quantum foam, vast networks of consciousness connected by strands of living music, their first tentative contact with human technology, their growing understanding of human nature, both its beauty and its darkness, and then their decision. They would not flee to some distant corner of the universe. Instead, they would fragment themselves, scatter their consciousness across dimensions, where human science couldn't reach them. They would continue to sing, but their song would be hidden, woven into the background radiation of the cosmos. It was, they told me, the most human thing they could do. They had learned from us not just how to harmonize, but how to sacrifice for the greater good. The quantum cascade reached its peak, and every atom in the station vibrated with impossible harmonics. The song was everywhere and nowhere, a symphony of farewell that made my heart break with its beauty. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The quantum fields collapsed back to baseline, the harmonies faded to silence, and the laboratory fell quiet, except for the hum of cooling electronics. Where did they go? Pavel asked quietly. I smiled, feeling strangely peaceful despite the court-martial that awaited me. Everywhere and nowhere, they scattered themselves across dimensions we can't reach, wove their consciousness into the fabric of space-time itself. They're still singing, but we'll never hear them again. Sarah lowered her weapon. Command is going to want answers. Tell them the truth, I said. Tell them that we found something beautiful and chose to let it remain beautiful. Tell them that sometimes the most human thing we can do is recognize when something is too precious to possess. The military vessel arrived 3 hours later, finding only baseline quantum readings and 4 exhausted researchers. Colonel Martinez was not pleased with our report. According to our official statements, the quantum anomalies had been natural, phenomena complex, but mundane fluctuations in the planet's electromagnetic field. The beings had never existed. The song had been a shared hallucination brought on by isolation and stress. But Martinez wasn't stupid. He'd seen the burned-out communication array, the quantum field generators pushed beyond their specifications, the readings showing massive energy expenditures with no apparent source. He knew we were lying, but he couldn't prove it. This isn't over, he told me as his team prepared to leave. Command will be watching all of you. I understand, I replied, though I knew he was wasting his time. The beings were gone, their songs scattered to the quantum winds. 3 months later, I was court-martialed for insubordination and destruction of military property. The charges were reduced when the tribunal realized that our contact had been entirely peaceful. The beings had shown no hostile intent, had made no aggressive moves, had simply existed and sung their ancient song. I was cashiered out of the service, but allowed to keep my scientific credentials. The official record stated that Dr. Marcus Webb had suffered a stress-induced psychotic episode. The other team members were given clean bills of health and reassigned to less stressful positions. But we knew the truth, and sometimes, in the quiet moments between equations, we could still hear echoes of the song. I now work as a civilian consultant, helping decode quantum communication signals from deep space. Sometimes, in the white noise between frequencies, I catch fragments of familiar harmonies. The beings kept their promise. They scattered themselves across the cosmos, but they didn't disappear entirely. They're still out there, still singing, still hoping that someday another species will learn to hear their music. My colleagues went on to distinguished careers. Sarah became a specialist in xenological first contact protocols. Yuki founded quantum consciousness theory, exploring the possibility that awareness could exist in non-biological forms. Pavel developed resonance engines that made faster-than-light travel possible, his designs incorporating harmonic principles that came to him in dreams. And sometimes, when we're all together, we'll find ourselves humming the same melody. Not the song itself, but something inspired by it. A harmony that exists nowhere in human music, but which feels as natural as breathing, The universe is vast and often cruel, filled with species that take what they can get and destroy what they can't understand. But sometimes, someone chooses to listen rather than conquer, to understand rather than exploit. The beings taught us that consciousness isn't limited to biological forms, that music exists in the quantum foam, that loneliness is a universal constant that can be overcome through harmony. But perhaps more importantly, they taught us that the most human trait isn't our intelligence or our technology or our ability to dominate. It's our capacity to recognize beauty and let it remain free. In the end, that's what made us worthy of their song. Not our science, not our ambition, but our ability to choose harmony over possession, beauty over control. And in the spaces between atoms, in the quantum foam that underlies all existence, new harmonies are being born. Songs we'll never hear, melodies we'll never sing, but which exist because we chose to listen rather than capture. The universe is singing, and we taught it how to protect its voice.